South Africa and then reverses it, while Parks Tau says he still has hopes that AGOA might survive the Trump administration. Ethos Capital does well from fintech but looks to cut its share price discount. How Google is trying to consolidate its lead in AI. And from 7:30 tonight, when you should jump into that tempting initial public offering. All of that to come, but first, the very latest Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. Ekurhuleni Metro Police Nazi is officially on special leave following allegations that he's linked to suspected underworld figure Vusmusi Kat Matlala. The Metro has confirmed Mkhwanazi applied for the leave, which has now been granted. Meanwhile, the City Council is currently meeting to decide whether the EMPD top cop should be suspended. Last week, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi dropped his name before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, accusing him of granting undue favours to Matlala. Alpha Ramushana has more.
It's been a year since EWN reported that EMPD Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi allegedly handed over blue lights to attempted murder-accused Vusmuzi Kat Matlala. Despite police watchdog IPED recommending disciplinary action against him, Mkhwanazi was instead promoted to acting head of the EMPD. It was only after he was implicated at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry that the city moved to act. Ekurhuleni spokesperson Paramile Mbengashe has confirmed that Mkhwanazi is now on special leave.
I can confirm that he made the application on Tuesday earlier this week, and that special leave was approved. As to how long, the process of applying for leave is a private matter between an employee and the employer.
The Ekurhuleni City Council will decide today whether Mkhwanazi should be suspended. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News.
The Western Cape Mobility Department is urging Cape Town rival taxi associations, CATA and CODETA, to resume talks to end the impasse between them. This as day 9 of a 30-day taxi route shutdown from Mfuleni and Khayelitsha to Somerset West comes to an end. CODETA has approached the courts to challenge this decision by the provincial government. That matter is expected to be heard at the High Court tomorrow. Provincial Mobility MEC Isaac Silegu has thanked commuters for their patience during this period.
As we enter day 9 of the 30 days route and lane closures and following a midweek public holiday, I am pleased to report that the situation on the affected route and lanes remain calm as per our monitoring systems. Law enforcement agencies remain deployed to ensure the enforcement of measures.
Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has announced plans to roll out specialized smart meters designed to identify illegal connections. The minister addressed members of the media in Pretoria today, outlining plans to end load reduction in 12 months. He says once all costs have been determined by Eskom, more than 6 million customers are set to receive the new meters. Ramokgopa says some other special features are that the meters in the pipeline would determine which customers qualify for free electricity. He broke down their benefits.
So with the rollout of smart meter, what that allows us to do is that if there are those who continue to be delinquent, by delinquency in this instance, I mean those that have the means, can afford, and they choose not to pay, we are able to isolate that customer alone.
The Patriotic Alliance has given the ANC 7 days to reappoint its Deputy President, Kenny Kunene, in the City of Johannesburg's Mayoral Committee, or the party will exit the GNU and all coalitions. The party gave the ultimatum after Kunene was cleared of wrongdoing after he was found at the Santon home of Katiso KT Molefe when police showed up to arrest the businessman in July. Kunene was removed from the Mayoral Committee by Patriotic Alliance leader Gayton Mackenzie, who instituted an independent investigation by a law firm which found Kunene did nothing wrong. Kunene is now calling for his reinstatement by Joburg Mayor Dada Morero.
And now I am going back in, now that I have been cleared, and we are saying that if I am not appointed within 7 days, obviously looking at the process of IEC, all coalitions, all those who are in coalitions with the ANC, whether it's provincial, whether it's local, whether it's national, we will then walk away out of the GNU, out of the GLU, out of the GPU.
In Indonesia, authorities have reported that at least 1,074 children have fallen ill from free school lunches in the country between Monday and yesterday this week. This is the latest development in a string of mass food poisoning events linked to President Prabowo Subianto's multi-billion-dollar nutritious meals program. Last week, 800 students suffered from food poisoning in West Java and Central Sulawesi provinces. Victims of the recent outbreaks complained of stomach aches, a dizziness and nausea, as well as shortness of breath, which is a non-typical symptom of food poisoning. President Prabowo has made the nutritious meal program, which aims to offer free lunches to 80 million school children, a signature of his leadership. However, the rise in cases of mass food poisoning incidents has led to NGOs calling for the suspension of the program due to health concerns, in which negligent food preparation was cited as a suspected cause in previous cases stemming from the free lunch program. Gold's trading at $3,736.39 an ounce. The rand's at 17.44 to the dollar, at 23.28 to the pound, at 20.35 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $69.23 a barrel.
And in your sport, Europa League's first match day will come to a conclusion today, with Aston Villa set to host Bologna in the highlights of the evening. Proteas women have their World Cup warm-up against Bangladesh washed away, and a spot in the Asia Cup final on the line as Bangladesh and Pakistan meet.
I'll look at your weather. Cloudy skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 12 degrees and peak at highs of 23. Pretoria is at 13 and 24. Vereeniging is at 12, reaching highs of 25 degrees. Clear skies for the mother city, along with fresh southerly winds at a low of 13 and a high of 23 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. Ekurhuleni Metro Police Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi is officially on special leave following allegations that he's linked to suspected underworld figure Vusmusi Ket Matlala.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
In Ekurhuleni, Brakpan, at this hour you can expect heavy delays. This is on Elsburg Road approaching Heidelberg Road. That's opposite Carnival City. Also in Boksburg, traveling towards Brakpan, you can still expect about a 30-minute delay. This is due to roadworks N17 eastbound between Osborne Road and Heidelberg Road. That's if you're in Sandton. At this stage, there's still bumper traffic approaching the intersection of Grayston and Catherine Street. Still slow-moving traffic in the Devland area due to roadworks. That's heading into Eldorado Park on the Golden Highway between the N1 and Union Avenue. While in the Mother City, there's slow-moving traffic N2 outbound. This is heading towards Airport Approach Road. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes, 8 minutes after 6 tonight. You get that kind of day after a public holiday where actually everything starts to move again, and actually quite a lot of news about. Part of it, of course, due to trade. The president saying sort of Monday night, Tuesday night at the United Nations General Assembly that trade is being weaponized. I don't think he quite realized at the time that Taiwan was literally about to use microchips as a weapon against us. And we spoke about this last night on The Money Show, that microchips are very useful for Taiwan. They're literally the world leader in it. They're able to actually use that as a trade weapon. What I did not expect is to wake up and find out that overnight they had rescinded their ban on the export of microchips to South Africa. So first they said you would not be allowed to export them here. Now they say, well, actually, we're rescinding that. I mean, it made me think a little bit of, when you're in a negotiation, you have a big weapon, the threat of the weapon is more useful to you than the weapon. It's a very strange story. We will unpack all of that in just a moment. Dr. Razaj Amin will be with us. Donald McKay will talk to you. Also, Dr. Kingsley Makobela, the former ambassador, he's been looking at this issue as well. I find it fascinating because trade really now is getting to the heart of relationships between countries in a way that it didn't before. Looking forward to a conversation with Ethos Capital. I should just remind you, they actually own a stake in Prime Media, which owns, well, yours truly, that owns this radio station. But they're reporting their results today. And then, I couldn't quite believe it. I had to check the headline about 3 times. Investec, the bank, has an energy trading license from NERSA. And there's another headline today that Vodacom has a virtual wheeling platform, which I know sounds like online gambling, but a virtual wheeling platform is actually the ability to buy and sell electricity from one point to another. You produce it in one place and you can consume it somewhere else. Why are cell phone companies and banks getting involved in electricity? And it reminded me a little bit of the kind of link that you see between banking and cell phones, and how your cell phone network and your bank are really quite similar in an interesting way. 10 after 6.
The Money Show.
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
And DSTV channel 856.
So I wonder how you feel. Well, I know how you feel about paying traffic fines. My question really is, when and how often do you pay them? And it says quite something that I can go on the radio and tell you this. I look at paying traffic fines only when I need to renew my license disc. It's the only time that I actually go to check. And I was thinking about, how do I do it? Well, some people use Fines SA. Some people go and do it on your bank. I tend to do it on my bank if I can. There is the R2 website as well. And I think more and more, as we try and sort of reduce our kind of interaction with government, and isn't that a terrible thing? You'd rather go for the kind of private sector interface, no matter how it works, because you know that you'll be able to do it on the website and it will be done quickly. Now, look, if you ask me, under the law, they say you have to have a license disc. The license disc serves no earthly purpose. No one checks on the address, and it really does nothing. It's not like anyone checks or roadworthies the car in any way, shape, or form. It is, frankly, and let me just be clear about this, it is just revenue for the province. So, frankly, we should do away with them. But I was interested. Sometimes, and it's happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to you, I've been stopped by a police officer. They say, you were speeding. You say, oh, I'm very sorry. They say, I could fine you for that. And I say, I know. They say, or you could buy me breakfast or cool drink money. And I say, well, I'm not going to do that. We can go through the fine process. And then they shake you by the hand and wish you a good day. It's a very strange thing. That's been my experience. And I realize because of my identity, my experience might be different to yours. But I would just like to know how you pay a traffic fine and how often you check what fines you have. I must just say, coming out of Sandton every evening, about 2-3 nights a week, there is a stop. They check, off we go. Once in the last sort of 13 months or so, I've been stopped at a very big traffic, at a very big sort of traffic roadblock, and actually had to pay fines that they had accumulated, and you take your credit card and off you go. Traffic fines, how scared are you of them? 011 883 0702 021 446 0567, and your stories on voice notes, please, on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, that comment this week at the United Nations General Assembly from President Cyril Ramaphosa, he put it quite nicely. I thought that trade is being used as a weapon. So many features to his comment. The actions of the Trump administration, I presume, is what he was talking about. The fears that AGOA is a dead duck, and decisions by Taiwan this week, first to curb the sale of microchips to South Africa, and then overnight to remove that curb. In other words, that ban is no longer in place. Well, we start your coverage of all of this with Dr. Azar Jamin, Director-in-Chief Economist at Econometrics. Azar, good evening. In an environment in which trade is being used as a weapon, when things are changing so quickly, when trade policies are almost impossible to understand, over the longer term, I presume this would make the entire world a little bit poorer.
I would imagine you're absolutely correct, Stephen. And the main reason is that you've seen the evolution of an environment of such uncertainty that the willingness to invest and trade is actually quite in a lot of trouble at the moment. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. And it all started with Donald Trump switching from imposing very high import tariffs and then rescinding those and then reintroducing some at different levels. And we see changes almost on a daily basis. And now you've seen this in the case of Taiwan relative to South Africa. And it also began with Trump starting to impose punitive barriers on the likes of Brazil, especially because of political factors, but also India, and to a lesser extent, maybe South Africa.
Our Trade Minister Parks Tau, he was on Bloomberg on Tuesday night at the UN, and he said he's still confident that AGOA could be renewed. Now, I understand why AGOA is important to certain sectors of our economy, but when we face the tariffs that we face from the United States at the moment, does AGOA still matter?
This is a huge question that's been asked ever since Trump imposed that 30% tariff on South African exports of automotive and agricultural products. And really, in theory, it wouldn't matter at all because the moment you, on one hand, you let a country like South Africa export things without any tariff, and then on the other side you impose a 30% tariff. It just makes no sense. The two are totally contradictory. But you've got to remember that AGOA is broader than just South Africa. It encapsulates a lot of other African countries as well. So I don't know whether that complicates the issue still further in terms of answering your question.
We keep sort of being given glimpses of hope. We're still negotiating with the US. This could change, that could change. I kind of wonder at some point if we're just going to, as awful as this sounds, have to make peace with the fact that this is whatever the final tariff settles at, this is what it's going to be for a while.
I would think you're absolutely correct. But I also want to make the point that I think South Africans are getting far too carried away with giving this as such a high profile. There are far more important economic influences in the country and issues that have to be cleared up rather than just our trade with the United States, which is actually, and what is being jeopardized is really just 30 to 40% of our exports to the U.S. because by value, the major portion of our exports is free of tariffs. Critical products such as PGMs and ferrochrome and titanium and that sort of thing. The United States is not imposing tariffs on those because it needs them. So, but there are many other issues. The fact that we are just not attracting enough investment, whether from local sources or international sources, that is of far greater importance. Yes, the two are related, but I think far too much attention is being paid to these trade negotiations, and it's detracting attention away from more critical areas of economic need that need discussion, including corruption and state capture and criminal syndicates and that kind of thing.
Dr. Azar Jamin, appreciate the time. Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics, you with the Money Show, 18 after 6. Donald Mackay is the Director at XA International Trade Advisors. Donald, good evening. Ramaphosa's comment that trade is being used as a weapon, I mean, he was talking about the Trump administration, I'm sure. But if you look at what Taiwan is trying to do over microchips, first they ban the sale to South Africa, then they sort of unban it. It's not just the US now, is it? Other countries are doing the same thing.
Yeah, good evening. Trump has definitely set a bad example for pretty much the whole world, it would appear. I did think the Taiwanese action was quite surprising. I'm guessing it's related to the pressure to move their offices out of Pretoria to Johannesburg. But then they've walked it back again. And this too feels very Trumpian. Just do something today and then change your mind tomorrow. So lots and lots of uncertainty, which is just a bad thing for everyone.
In a way, while we're pointing the finger at Trump, and I think that's correct, but hasn't this all been a long time coming because of issues around the World Trade Organization, other issues that were supposed to create a set of rules that would govern all trade? When in fact the world is sort of, trade blocks have been kind of breaking up in a strange way, partly because of the US.
Yes. So between the US and China, they've largely broken the WTO. We'll have to see what emerges out of the ashes, but as it stands at the moment, the WTO is largely dysfunctional, which is not a good thing at all. And of course, for bodies like the WTO to work, they don't have a police force or an army or something that can enforce these rules. they rely on the member states to keep their word, and it's proven that neither China nor the US were ever terribly keen on being held accountable there. And so that is definitely a problem. And it does ripple through everywhere. There's even in South Africa at the moment, we are suddenly considering national security as a reason to impose import control, for example. In other words, you need to get a permit before you can do an import. This was just unheard of before, and suddenly it's spoken of in quite normal terms.
Sure. Okay, so the walls go up. Bringing them down again requires probably more than the removal of Trump.
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, it's been very hard to simply walk back. The problem is protectionism is politically very appealing. It's economically a nightmare, but politicians love it because it looks like they're doing something. It's a very visible thing you can see. You'll see Trump bragging about the billions that are being collected every month in customs duties, never mentioning that money is coming out of the pockets of poor and middle class people, largely in the US. So it's appealing, but it's typically very bad economics.
Donald Mackay, thanks very much. Director at XA International Trade Advisors, you at The Money Show. 21 after 6. Dr. Kingsley Makobela is a risk analyst and former diplomat, and in fact a former ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, good evening. Taiwan imposes this ban on the sale of microchips to South Africa and then rescinds that ban. Is this one of those moments where maybe they realized the threat of using the weapon is more powerful than using the weapon?
Stephen, good evening. To give a bit of context to this Taiwanese flip-flop position, perhaps it's important for one to reflect on the microchip industry in Taiwan. It's a $165 billion business, and Taiwan has a market capitalization of 20% of the global semiconductor. And Taiwan is a big economy, about 814 GDP, and they rank, I think, 20th in the world or 22nd in the world with a population of 23. If you compare that to South Africa, which has a very small economy of $418 billion, you then start to understand why the Taiwanese are trying to flex their muscles. But you'll recall the statement issued by DECO, Stephen, sometimes in October last year. What is problematic in the statement when I read it that time and I tried to go through it again? It's DECO's statement that the relocation of the Taiwanese offices to Johannesburg has to do with the normal standard diplomatic practice. They say that the capital city is a seat of embassies and high commission. That argument is flawed. If the basis of the discussion with the Taiwanese was based on that, it's flawed because you have a country like the United Kingdom. London is both the capital of the country and is the commercial hub of the country. So is Tokyo, so is France. You get exception there and there. Germany, it's not, Berlin and Frankfurt are serving different purposes. But I think the decision by the Taiwanese, they realized that really using the semiconductor would not move the needle, because if you look at the trade between the two countries last year, about 75 million rand, 4-point-something million dollars, it's not that much. And they realized they can't use this as a leverage.
Isn't there another risk, both for the Americans with what they're doing to us and with Taiwan, that this just moves us closer to China, makes us more dependent on Beijing, surely?
When the United States imposed sanction on importing the Chinese semiconductor and preventing certain technology from reaching China, the Chinese reciprocated. And this reciprocity of the Chinese has been very heavy because some of their rare earths are used in the military and so on. What the Chinese did, they set up a bureaucratic process to process their rare earths to the United States, making it much more complicated and complex. That's why, in my own view, Stephen, you'll never see this 50% tariffs imposed on the Chinese, because the Chinese have a huge leverage. But you see, it has started a new precedent to operate outside the normal world trade regulations, world trade regulations, and to work outside the international law, which are these institutions that are meant to arbitrate and facilitate trade between countries and arbitrate any dispute. So you find a lot of unilateral approaches. And I think, and I'm glad the Taiwanese realize this too early, that doing this actually is shooting themselves in the foot, because in the process, you know, the Taiwanese are selling to China, I think, about $50 billion a year, and another 37 billion from Hong Kong, which combined it gives 80-something billion to China. They realize that won't work.
I mean, does Taiwan come away from this looking a little foolish, or do they come away from this having reminded Pretoria of how important they are?
Well, you know, if you look at their statement, Stephen, they are saying they are suspending this after the Ministry of Commerce consulted with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan. They decided to suspend this. Then you ask yourself, from its inception, were there any consultations between the two entities of government in Taiwan, or it was a unilateral decision that was taken by the Commerce Department? And it seems in this case, the president of the island intervened to say, wait a minute, folks, cool down about this. This is how we're going to handle this matter. I hope they realize that using trade as a weapon of choice, to use President Ramaphosa's word, it's sometimes misguided. You can end up shooting yourself in the foot. And in this respect, I think they were shooting themselves in the foot.
Dr. Kingsley Makobela, Mr. Ambassador, really appreciate the time. Thank you. Risk analyst and former diplomat. 26 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Imtiaz Suleiman's Director and Portfolio Manager at Sentio Capital. Imtiaz, good evening to you. We've been talking about the actions of the American economy in the last few moments, and despite everything that's going on around it, its GDP figures showing it's doing quite nicely.
Hi, good evening, Stephen. Yeah, I think what we're seeing is GDP numbers continue to surprise on the upside. We did have a very weak first quarter out of the US, and subsequently that has rebounded quite significantly to around 3.8%. And this brings a conundrum for the Fed, because you've had very strong GDP growth, you have a weakening labor market, but also inflation that is above their 2% target. So this action and price action that we saw today was some sort of weakening in terms of the U.S. markets with regards to the tech sector, which is very highly correlated to long bond yields. And we saw a bit of a sell-off on the back of lower expectations for Fed rate cuts throughout the next 6-month period.
I mean, we keep talking about interest rates and inflation. We had PPI figures out today, which basically it was 1.5 last month, and it was 2.1 for the month of August. And in the US, it now seems there's less of a chance as a result of these GDP figures of an interest rate cut. So the picture starts to get a little scrambled.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we've been hearing out of the Fed, that they continue to be very data dependent. And the data has been very mixed. So I think today's numbers will reduce the odds of that rate cuts out of the US. But we still see that rates should come down, but maybe not aggressively as the market was pricing in prior to today's number.
An update today from Barlow World, and they've been in the news a lot because of the sort of I shouldn't call it a management buyout, the bid by a consortium that includes the CEO to try and take it over. But it's an update over the last 11 months, and across most sectors, their revenue was down. In a way, quite surprising considering how well they had been doing for a while.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a mixed bag, but generally revenue was down 10% on a group level. If you look at the different divisions, Equipment South Africa, which is really their CAT business, that revenue was down by 3.9%, but their margins also came under pressure. The order book did grow, and I think what we're seeing from a commodity perspective is that the platinum group metals have been quite strong. The gold price has certainly been quite strong as well. So we should see a better next year or going forward. And then they've got a business in Mongolia and Russia, which is self-funding. Mongolia also came under pressure. So if you look at it together, some of the consumer-facing businesses like Ingrain, which is a starch business in South Africa, face some pressure with regards to higher imports and more competition. And it speaks to a very weak domestic consumption environment that we find ourselves in. But I think, as commodity prices hold up, they should see that order book growth translate into better growth down the line.
Imtiaz Suleiman, thanks very much indeed. Director and Portfolio Manager at Sentio Capital. Just gone 6:30. More on when and how you pay your traffic fines in a moment. First, Maki, good evening. Blue lights in Ekurhuleni. What a story.
That's right, Stephen. Good evening. Ekurhuleni Metro Police Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi is once again in hot water after a motion was tabled for his suspension over suspected links to alleged underworld figure Vusmuzi Cat Matlala. Mkhwanazi is accused of supplying EMPD blue lights to Matlala, which were later installed on the alleged crime boss's personal vehicles in 2023. The Ekurhuleni City Council is currently meeting to decide whether Mkhwanazi should be suspended. His name also surfaced at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry last week, where he was accused of granting Matlala unlawful favours. Matlala is currently being held at the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Facility in Pretoria, facing charges of attempted murder against his former partner, actress Tebogo Thobejane. Alpha Ramushana has more.
Police watchdog IPET previously recommended the city of Ekurhuleni take disciplinary action against EMPD Deputy Chief Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, who allegedly provided blue lights to attempted murder accused Vusmuzi Cat Matlala. More than a year has passed since the Police Investigative Directorate wrapped up its investigation, yet no action has been taken against the EMPD top cop. The Independent Ratepayers Association of South Africa has now tabled an urgent motion for his suspension, with the Ekurhuleni City Council expected to decide on the matter today. The association argues that the allegations levelled against the Metro's top cop seriously undermine the credibility and integrity of both the municipality and its police department. It further stresses that claims linking him to an alleged underworld figure cannot be ignored. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, Mkhwanazi is officially on special leave after filing an application on Tuesday, with the Metro confirming today that it has been granted. Political newcomer Africa Maibuya Movement is preparing for its national convention in November, saying it must be ready with solutions for all problems, even if nothing can be done about them immediately. Following his departure from the EFF 13 months ago and then being fired from the MK party 3 months ago, Floyd Shivambu is now at the helm of his own party and preparing its foundational documents. A 2-day meeting is underway in Midrand, where Shivambu today encouraged members to help refine its manifesto into a party constitution. Introducing the 126-page document, Shivambu says it covers not only political and economic matters, but also thorny issues such as immigration. Explaining the party's motto for the future, Shivambu appeared to take a slogan of his former political home, the EFF, one step further.
The clarion call of Africa Maibuya Movement is total freedom and emancipation now. It's not total freedom and emancipation in our lifetime. We are looking for total freedom and emancipation now. That is the principle, that is the clarion call that is going to drive all of us.
And in Western Europe, in the latest blow for the country's ailing car sector, German industrial giant Bosch says it will cut 13,000 jobs, mostly in its auto unit. The layoffs represent about 10% of Bosch's total workforce in the country and 3% of its staff worldwide. The auto industry in Europe's biggest economy has been hammered by fierce competition in key market China, weak demand, and a slower than expected shift to electric vehicles. Bosch, the world's biggest auto supplier, making everything from braking and steering systems to sensors, says the downsizings were needed to help make annual savings of $2.9 billion in the group's car unit. Workers' representatives vowed to resist the cuts, labelling them unprecedented. Look at your weather. A cloudy Friday in store for Gauteng. Tomorrow, temperatures will drop to overnight lows between 12 and 13 degrees and peak at highs between 23 and 25 degrees. Clear skies for Cape Town, along with fresh southerly winds at a low of 13 and a high of 23 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. Ekurhuleni Metro Police Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi is once again in hot water after a motion was tabled for his suspension over suspected links to alleged underworld figure Vusmuzi Cat Matlala.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage, if you're in the Boksburg area heading towards Brakpan, you can still expect heavy delays. This is due to roadworks on the N17 eastbound between Osborne and Carnival City. Also in the Brakpan area, we still have bumper traffic. This is approaching the intersection of Elsburg and Heidelberg Road. That's opposite Carnival City. If you are heading towards Bedfordview, that's coming from the Edenvale area, traffic is a bit sluggish. R24 westbound between Edenvale Road and the Gilulis interchange. Roodepoort, also slow moving traffic on Randfontein Road between Corlett Avenue and Adcock. Mother City, slow moving traffic into outbound. This is heading towards Airport Approach Road. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072 702 1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Light the fire this game day with a winning lineup from Checkers, like Championship Boerewors thick or thin for just $109.99 per kilo. Coca-Cola Original Taste Less Sugar Soft Drink 2 litres, 2 for 45 Rand, save 11 Rand. And Monster Energy Drink, a 500ml 4-pack for $57.99, save 12 Rand. Light the fire, South Africa, and let Checkers do the rest. Deals valid until this Sunday, only at Checkers.
Ready, jet, go! 2 fully paid trips to the Abu Dhabi Motor Racing Spectacular must be won in the thrilling new JetX competition exclusive to Hollywood Bets. An unforgettable experience awaits on one of the fastest circuits on the planet, with the world's top drivers battling for supremacy. To stand a chance to win, bet 10 Rand or more on JetX. 1 million Rand in cash is also up for grabs. Hollywood Bets. Fly higher with our multiplier. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, I was asking you earlier, how often do you go and see how much money you owe in traffic fines? Do you pay them?
Hi, Stephen. Kieran from Benoni. We check our fines every 2 months on the internet. And last week, one of my reps was stopped and told all of a sudden we have 5 outstanding fines from 2020. Blow me back. How did they appear all of a sudden?
So I really don't think that we should drift between neither America nor Taiwan or China. I would like it if we could be dependent on ourselves instead of have to be dependent on one or other superpower. That's my opinion. It's Chad.
Chad, yeah, I think you're right. And I think Azar Jamin was heading that way. We need to actually concentrate on ourselves. We need to stop being dependent on everyone else. I think that's right. I'm sorry about the traffic fines and obviously managing reps. That can be a very difficult issue. I just get a sense that kind of no one takes traffic fines seriously. And that's a serious problem. It's a really interesting symptom about our society. And you can see it because, I mean, as you're driving right now, how often do you see someone not indicating, going through a robot, going through a robot that's out without stopping? All of those things really is a symptom of what's really going on.
EWN Sport.
Anthony Trochet, the sports people don't get traffic fines. Is that right?
No, that is very wrong. We do get traffic fines, but we pay them in time.
All of them, always?
All the time.
Really?
I'm not even going to lie.
Yeah, you're such a nerd.
I am very pedantic about that. I'm just petrified that one day I'm going to be locked up for not paying a traffic fine.
You can call me. I'll come and get you.
This has been a genuine fear of mine since I got my driver's. I am petrified of a traffic fine. So the minute I get it, within a week, I have paid it.
Wow. Okay. We're going to have to unpack that a little bit. Maybe off air to start.
Probably best.
The Europa League tonight.
Yeah, Europa League's first match day will conclude this evening. Selected fixtures sees RB Salzburg against Porto, Stuttgart meets Celta Vigo, and Aston Villa come up against Bologna, a team they beat during last season's UEFA Champions League. Manager Unai Emery, who's led the side to 3 successive European campaigns, expects Villa Park to be lively.
For me, Europe is always a dream. In this competition, being protagonist is really very excited way. And of course, to share with our supporters what I did 2 years ago playing in Conference League. Villa Park always was amazing. The atmosphere we created. Last year in Champions League, the same. I think the supporters are very excited in this competition like we are.
Those games kick off at 9 p.m. In cricket, the Proteas women's first of 2 World Cup warm-ups ODIs was abandoned due to inclement weather after just 9 overs. They had won the toss and elected to bat first against Bangladesh in Colombo. Tasman Brits ending with 19 not out. However, the rest of the top order fell. We saw captain Laura Wolfhard out for a golden duck. 2 overs later, Annery Dirksen dismissed for 2. Marizan Cup didn't hang around for too long as the all-rounder was dismissed for 21. They're set to play Sunday against Pakistan women in the final warm-up of their World Cup. In Springbok action, they set to face off against Los Pumas in the Rugby Championship Saturday afternoon. Now, the Boks have been in top form this year, and that's seen Manny Libok play pivotal roles in their encounters. He kicked 6 of his 7 shots at goal, as well as being the playmaker in their 43-10 win over the All Blacks. The opposite is also true, as they have struggled. Then he's been criticised for their lackluster performances. One of those came at Ellis Park to the Wallabies. The fly half shared how he's handled his nerves since then and how he did it against the All Blacks.
Yes, the pressure was on when I got on the field, but I took a lot of confidence out of the preparation we had throughout the week. And like we train nowadays, it's always like game intensity. So it wasn't something new for me to go into the field. I just go on there and then obviously go do a job and go do whatever I need to do in that given situation and try to put the team in the best possible position to get the result.
Kickoff is 5:10 Saturday afternoon. And Anita Shader, Eyewitness News Sport.
The team's on a roll today. Let me focus on payroll. Duty calls in the kitchen. That's why I have a business insurer that is agile and on the ball all the time on all things. I chose My Way Business Insurance, getting 24/7 emergency service and saving on my premiums, plus my business assist to handle my admin.
Visit myway.co.za or dial 0860 64 64 64 and get a quote today. My Way is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's, C's and standard rates apply. My Way. Live your way.
Every day, most of us spend an hour planning, prepping and stressing over what's for dinner. That's around 29,200 hours of your life spent running from grocery store to the kitchen to the fridge to the stove. Why not spend that time running for yourself? Or towards something you love doing and let You Cook handle dinner. Delivered, prepped and ready to cook. So choose You Cook and take back some me time. Visit youcook.co.za to find out how.
Small businesses are anything but small. They're the backbone of our communities, the dreamers, the doers, the ones who keep Mzansi moving forward. That's why 702 and Capitec Business Banking are putting them in the spotlight. Every Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m. Catch Small Business Focus with Capitec, where we showcase the hustle, heart, and the secrets to thriving in today's economy. Your vision matters, and with Capitec, you're never building it alone. Small Business Focus with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m. on 702. Capitec Bank is an authorized FSP 46669.
702.
Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
17 minutes now to 7 the time. Well, a fascinating series of announcements from the Electricity Minister, Jose Nsoroma today. Government is trying to stop load reduction, where township and rural areas in particular, the network in an area cannot actually sustain the load. As a result, areas are put in load reduction. Happens often for 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening. Basically, there are many people who, whenever they're awake and at home, have no electricity. Jose Maleshe is an expert on energy and electricity and financing. Jose, good evening. So the minister says there'll be a combination of smart meters and microgrids. Okay, but this is a difficult problem. It's a very difficult technical problem, and he wants to fix all of this in a year. Surely that's a big promise to make.
Well, I was actually, I'm supportive, and I think it's a good thing that firstly they are trying to do what they are doing. But I was also surprised about the timelines, especially for microgrids and those kind of projects. But I think what maybe makes him to say that is because they are going to do the work on ESCOM balance sheet. So basically what they're going to do is to implement smart meters, which indeed have been proven to turn around payments in the long run. And this is because they think firstly, they are owed almost 100 billion by municipalities, and they've not been making progress over many years of trying to address that. So they think that the smart meters can turn around that. And also in terms of the fact that right now, when they do load reduction, they impact everybody who's within that vicinity, whether you're a paying customer or not. That it becomes a problem. So they are trying to make sure at least if they are not giving you electricity, it's because you are the one who's not paying. So the intentions and all of the objectives are all good. However, there is an issue in terms of whether they can meet those turnaround times.
Well, I mean, Jose, I'm reminded, I hate to be this guy, but there's a local election in a year's time, so that must be a factor in all of this. Okay, so there are a few things. If you put smart meters in the past we've seen in some communities when you've put prepaid meters in, there have been protests and often violence. Parts of Soweto, this has been a big issue. And I would imagine in communities, and I've never lived under load reduction, I've obviously lived through load shedding, but people might be inclined to think, well, if this is going to end load reduction, I'll happily accept the smart meter because that means I'm going to have electricity again.
Yes, if you are not the one that is connecting illegally, you will think that. Because if you are part of the group that is connecting illegally, you want the status quo to remain. And I think I like the fact that they did a proper analysis to say 80% of the areas that have load reduction seem to be in particular areas. Gauteng, I think, said 38%, and then there's Limpopo. There's five main provinces where they think they are going to have problems, and then a few other provinces, 20% of it, they think that's going to be easy. So at least they've got a plan that is methodical, whether or not they meet those timelines. But you're right. In terms of certain areas, they are saying subject to us not meeting resistance, and we know that they will meet resistance in those areas. Yeah.
When I hear the phrase microgrid, because that's the other point of this plan, my assumption is that Eskom is not a part of that. Now I might have that wrong, but if that is the case, they're going to solve load reduction by cutting Eskom away from paying customers, and isn't that bad for Eskom?
I don't. So there's a challenge with respect to the fact that we are supposed to reach 100% of access to electricity, universal access by 2030. We have done a lot, made a lot of inroads since 1994, but we still have not reached that level. We're around 80%. So I'm assuming that he's talking about the areas that are very far from the grid and not connected to the infrastructure, and therefore would like electricity of any kind. I think he made an example of an area, I don't know if it was in Zanin or whatever the area was, where they've now already done a pilot study where they are combining all these small-scale projects and doing that. So that would be a non-grid or off-grid solution.
There's been other developments in electricity today, Jose. I mean, there was confirmation Investec now has an electricity trading license. Investec, last time I checked, was a bank. Vodacom has now created a virtual wheeling platform so people can generate electricity or buy electricity in Musina and use it in Cape Town. They're a cell phone network. Why are they getting involved in electricity trading? I mean, are numbers, cell phone networks, banks and electricity going to become kind of the same thing?
Well, this is all about how sophisticated you can be, because these are all happening in terms of an electronic framework. So you are not really building infrastructure as Vodacom, but you understand networks. and you understand the Internet of Things, if I can put it that way. So in that sense, you are then don't have to be an IPP. You could be getting this from people who have the capacity to develop it, and all you do is to have those transactions with them to sell to you. And then that portfolio you'd be able to combine together. Probably as a price taker, you'd be able to get a good, a reasonable price, and then be able to compete in the market in that way.
Jose, thanks so much for the time. Jose Maleshe is, of course, the expert on electricity and energy and financing as well, which is really where the story is now going, I think. 10 minutes to 7.
This is Jade. She'll spend hours comparing almond milk and once made a spreadsheet just for sneakers. But when she found Santam, SA's leading short-term insurer that offers a range of cover options, from vehicle to building and home contents, even she didn't overthink it. The kind of freedom Santam gives you takes some getting used to. Speak to your broker. Santam, this is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
Yeah, no, don't worry. In spring I'll redo the lounge, freshen up the stoop. Yep, you've painted yourself into a corner. Luckily, the Chamberlain Paint Festival is here to get you out of it with flying colours. From 24 September to 12 October, get 15% off paint mixing on Dulux, Plascon and Chamber Value. Get expert in-store advice from our friendly staff and master any DIY moment. Plus, you can stand a chance to win your share of 90,000 Rand in Chamberlain gift vouchers. Chamberlain, famous for hardware since 1903.
Running a business is tough. You need tools that just work. That's why more South African businesses are switching to Mac. At iStore, we make it easy with 4,000 Rands in added value when you switch. That's 3 years extended warranty and remote tech support, leaving you to focus on everything else. Switch to Mac with iStore, your expert partner. T's and C's apply. Mac at iStore. Run smooth as business should.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country.
8 minutes to 7 the time. Good to hear from you on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Ethos Capital reporting today their net asset value per share up by 30% in the year to the end of June. Their main investment, it's in the fintech firm Optasia. That grew by over 50%. The company says its other assets also grew. I'm happy to report that Prime Media, which owns this radio station, is one of them. Anthony De Beer is the CEO at Ethos Capital. Anthony, good evening. Optasia offers micro-lending, airtime, credit, things like that to people across most of Africa, some of the other parts of the world. It's clearly realizing big value for you.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Good evening. Optasia Investment's really been an outstanding performer for us. A lot of work's gone into that asset since we invested in 2019 into it. And it really shifted its business outside of pure airtime credit into microfinancing solutions. And it also started expanding across geographies and territories in emerging markets. It now operates in 38 countries across these product offerings that I mentioned earlier. And really, it's been growing in dollar terms substantially over the last couple of years. So we're very pleased with this asset. It's an asset that creates scale quickly. It generates a lot of earnings and a lot of cash flow growth quickly. And it's been able to really, through technology solutions, been able to provide credit scoring solutions that provide services that have been outstanding for us. So very pleased with the investment, and we've made a lot of progress with it over the last couple of years.
There's a lot going on in the fintech space at the moment, obviously. There's huge momentum. Are you expecting a lot more growth in the year ahead? The total addressable market in the lower end of the market where we operate, there's certainly complete underbanking taking place in emerging markets, and we're a beneficiary of this. This company, although there's a lot of competition, I think that there's still a lot of way to go for it. I think that on the microfinancing side in particular, it's completely underbanked. So I still see a huge opportunity across emerging markets for this. Prime Media's EBITDA was also up. We're not your biggest investment, obviously, Anthony, but that must help as well.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I mentioned earlier today that I guess your boss, Jonathan Proctor, has done an outstanding job over the last couple of years, really driving that business from a COVID low point and expanding its offering and taking very good market share. So very pleased with that investment and the progress that they've made there.
I better remind him once a day about that, see how it works out for me. Your share price is still trading at a discount to your intrinsic value. That discount's become much lower, of course. It's around 20% at the moment. Do you think there's scope to reduce it further?
I think typically most of these vehicles trade somewhere between 20 and 25%. We were as high as 40 to 50% at some stage, so brought that discount, the share price responded and brought that discount down quite a bit. But Stephen, unless we convert our investments into cash and return that cash to shareholders, there will be some discount to that underlying NAV. So we're working hard on our realization strategies for the various investments. We continue to be successful at it. And then the big thing for us is to return the capital to investors. So we've announced today also the unbundling of the Brait exchangeable bonds that we own. We will give that back to investors, thereby effectively giving that NAV back to shareholders to decide what they want to do with the Brait exchangeable bonds. And as we monetize assets and turn it into cash, we're effectively crystallizing the NAV. So I think the narrowing of that discount is a function of successful realizations this year and giving that money back to investors.
You have some other companies or stakes in other companies that I get the sense you might like to sort of get rid of, to dispose of. How easy or how difficult is it to do that at the moment? Is there a lot of interest in companies that are sort of South African owned? Are there people who are willing to take them off your hands?
Good assets sell themselves. That's a sort of a cliche in the private equity space that you don't struggle to sell good assets. I think for us, it's important to remain disciplined and make sure that we keep building assets in a manner whereby it's attractive for a variety of investors. So our aim always is to keep working the value in assets, keep driving it, keep strategically positioning them so that they ultimately can be disposed of to either financial buyers or to trade buyers. There's been a lot of interest in the last year. You would have seen that we realized just over 600 million through various underlying portfolio companies, and that's a testimony to the quality of the assets and people being interested in it. I see that continuing for a while, and we'll just keep being disciplined and patient and sell assets when it's due. We not a forced seller ever of any asset. We wait patiently for the right moments.
Your end game is to delist from the JSE. Any updates on that timeline? How long it might take?
No, the Optasia asset makes up more than 50% of our NAV. So I think rightly it's important that we make the right choices and decisions around that asset when that realization comes to bear. Then I think as far as the rest is concerned, it will become a really small cap on the market. And we've just seen that investor interest in wanes completely, and you've got to do something with it. So I think once Optasia has run its course, I think it will then be time for us to think about the next step. And delisting is the obvious route then.
Anthony, thank you very much indeed. Anthony De Beer, CEO at Ethos Capital.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
So consumer confidence numbers were released today, and it's in a way a kind of dipstick into how the middle classes are feeling. And I've been thinking a little bit about this because there is some economic data that suggests we should all be feeling just a little better than we are. So inflation is down, interest rates are heading down. If you look at the actual numbers, the amount of money going into your actual account, that's going up slightly, salaries are slightly higher, all of those things. So then why is sentiment down? And then I wondered if maybe the built environment in which you live is a factor. And let me just explain what I mean. Is that over the last 10 years, in most of the country, we probably have started to see more potholes, more things like that. So yes, load shedding is gone. There is load reduction, as you heard earlier. But if you're driving around in an area where the light bulb, where the lights, well, the lights don't actually work, and you're actually in a situation where you have potholes, and crucially, you actually think, well, it's not going to get better, well, then maybe that brings down your sentiment. We actually have a voice note on this tonight.
Hey, Stephen. The socio-economic conundrum here is you get late waiting for an e-wallet of a borrowed 200 Rand for petrol to go and earn a 500 Rand somewhere. And in that process, get a speeding fine of 1,000 Rand, which if you pay, you don't have livelihood, at least for the next 3 months. Norman in Kempton Park.
Norman, you are exactly on point. I think that's exactly how people feel right now. You know, the idea that, yes, the numbers are ticking up, but actually, the way in which we live, you know, where we live, how it looks, but crucially, the fact that there's just no sense it's getting better, I think that's what's bringing sentiment down. So, Norman, yeah, you're on point. You're with The Money Show. It's 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Mikey Mulapo. We begin in the east of Johannesburg, where the Ekurhuleni City Council is currently deliberating on calls for the suspension and forensic investigation into EMPD Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi, following allegations that he's linked to suspected underworld figure Vusmusi Ket Matlala. Mkhwanazi is accused of providing blue lights to Matlala, which were fitted to his private vehicles in 2023. He was named in the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry last week for allegations granting undue favours to the alleged crime boss. While the council meeting started this morning to discuss Mkhwanazi's suspension, the city has since confirmed that he has applied for special leave and it has been granted. Alpha Ramushana has more.
2 years ago, Vusmuzi Ket Matlala's partner posted a video on Instagram showing her driving her children to school in a vehicle fitted with blue lights. It was later revealed that the lights belonged to the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department and were allegedly provided to Matlala by EMPD Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi. Following an investigation, police watchdog IPED recommended that disciplinary action be taken against the EMPD top cop. In response, two political parties in the Ekurhuleni City Council, IRASA and the ATM, have tabled a motion for his suspension. The two parties are also requesting a forensic probe into his alleged ties to Matlala, despite the IPED report already pointing to misconduct. The City Council is now holding a closed-door meeting to determine whether Mkhwanazi should be suspended. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, in the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, as eyebrow-raising details are shared before the ongoing inquiry, crime expert Chat Thomas believes at the heart of an internal battle within the police service is the fight for control of crime intelligence. Thomas has been following the Commission's proceedings in Pretoria and has accused suspended Police Minister Sinzo Mchunu of freezing vacancies within crime intelligence as part of an ongoing battle for control of the unit. He says this includes controlling millions attached to the Secret Service account, otherwise known as the Slush Fund. Mkhunu's directive was contained in a letter to National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola last year, which also included an instruction to disband the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team. Arun Singh has more.
During a testimony before the Madlanga Commission today, head of SAPS's legal division, Major General Petronella van Rooyen, said the decision by Police Minister Sinzo Mchunu to halt the filling of all vacancies within crime intelligence amounted to executive overreach.
There is, however, no provision in the SAPS Act or employment regulations that authorizes the minister to blanketly halt the filling of posts.
Crime expert Chad Thomas says due to the nature of its functions, crime intelligence has access to enormous amounts of money.
Whoever controls that slush fund has the potential to control a lot of funding that could be used for illicit purposes.
Crime intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo, a close ally of KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, remains embroiled in a scandal related to the irregular appointment of an official into a highly specialized post within the unit. Arun Singh, Eyewitness News.
Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says they're making gains in increasing market access for South African cherry and blueberry exports, with China at the fore. Steenhuisen told attendees of the International Berry Organization conference in Cape Town earlier this week that government is conducting negotiations with several countries in the Middle East and Asia to increase exports. The minister says there are promising signs that China will accept the cherry and blueberry exports as talks advance with Thailand and South Korea to open up new markets for blueberries. According to reports, Steenhuisen said protocols are nearing completion in countries such as India, Israel and Vietnam, adding that other African countries would potentially provide new markets. SASSA beneficiaries are set to receive a small increase of 10 Rand in their monthly grant payments starting next month. The South African Social Security Agency announced the small bump in funds today, citing its adherence to Finance Minister Inoka Dongwana's budget tabled for 2025-2026. The agency spokesperson Andile Chana has broken down the figures recipients can now expect.
The social grant amounts will be increased as follows. The old age grant will increase from 2,310 to 2,320. The old age grant for persons older than 75 years old will increase from 2,330 to 2,340.
And in the U.S., the White House has raised the stakes in a clash over a possible U.S. government shutdown, telling federal agencies to prepare for more mass firings by President Donald Trump's administration. The memo by the White House Office of Management and Budget warned that the Republican administration would go beyond the usual practice of temporary suspensions during previous shutdowns. Trump is in a tense showdown with congressional Democrats over federal funding ahead of a fiscal deadline of midnight on September 30th, which would trigger a fresh political crisis in Washington. The White House memo said that agencies are directed to use this opportunity to consider reduction in force notices for all employees in areas of government bearing the brunt of a shutdown. Gold's trading at $3,734.18 an ounce. The rand's at 17.44 to the dollar, at 23.27 to the pound, at 20.36 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $69.21 a barrel.
Boksburg heading towards Brakpan. We still have roadworks causing delays. This is on the N17 eastbound between Osborne and Heidelberg Road. That's approaching Carnival City. And in the mother city, there's also slow-moving traffic. N2 outbound. This is heading towards Airport Approach Road.
A look at your weather. Cloudy skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 12 degrees and peak at highs of 23. Pretoria is at 13 and 24. Vereeniging is at 12, reaching highs of 25 degrees. Clear skies for Cape Town, along with fresh southerly winds at a low of 13 and a high of 23 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. The Ekurhuleni City Council is currently deliberating on calls for the suspension and forensic investigation into EMPD Deputy Chief Julius Mkhwanazi following allegations that he's linked to suspected underworld figure Vusmusi Ket Matlala.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country. Good evening. Plenty coming up in the next little while. We'll speak to Siphumelele Zondi, our tech expert, in just a moment. Artificial intelligence, everyone's talking about it, but Google seems to be buying it pretty much. We'll talk about that. Zanele Matoma, she's already sitting outside in our waiting room, the founder and CEO of Welo Health. We'll be speaking to her. She's been trying to cut worker absenteeism. I don't know how many times you or someone in your family, someone you work with, how many days you might have lost just queuing to try and get some help from a government clinic. Well, their aim is to kind of deal with that. We'll look at that in Small Business Focus. And then IPO 101, what you need to know before you buy into a firm that is actually now going onto the stock market. And one of the things I've noticed in my sort of short time watching the JSE is how newer firms, newer entrants to the JSE seem to go up and down so dramatically when they arrive. And it's not just big companies like Boxer, it's smaller ones too. Some of them, it's just incredible. So we'll talk about that on Investment School this evening. Good to hear from you. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. And of course, voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show, Tech Thursday.
Well, I don't know if you remember when social media started and you had companies like Instagram and WhatsApp, and suddenly they were bought by Facebook, which became Meta. Now, it seems Google might be doing that with AI, or certainly trying to. Siphumelele Zondi is our tech expert. Siphumelele, how's it? It's been a little while. Good to talk again. So, NVIDIA, they make the chips that you use for AI. They're working with Google. Others are too. What are they all working on?
Welcome back, Stephen, and yes, thank you very much for inviting me again. Hello. So they're working on a number of things, right? Because it's sort of like a ramping up AI that's especially coming out of the global north, because China has been seen as a threat to this. There are also projects that they're working on, not just in the United States of America, but in Europe as well, because it seems like there's this belief that Google has a lot of information, and maybe it does because of its existence that dates back to the last 20 years, in terms of images that are being used, in terms of the information that goes through Google. And so a lot of these smaller companies would, in a way, utilize Google's systems and the information that Google has in order for them to develop their systems. And NVIDIA and other companies are also trying to tap into that. But we also know that NVIDIA is the world's most developed and fastest chipset that's being used in artificial intelligence at the moment. So that's where the benefit is with this particular collaboration. And other companies are coming into some of the other projects that they're working on. Microsoft as well has come into certain projects that they're working on in Europe with this partnership. So it's basically information sharing with them, and with all the technology that they have that differs from the tech that each of the partners would have.
I mean, could this lead to some kind of merger? I mean, you know, in ordinary circumstances, you say a takeover, but I don't think even Google could buy NVIDIA at the moment.
Probably not for the big companies, but Google certainly has shown an interest and even invested in some of the small players. Think about Cypher, for example, which is a company that in a way invests in a cryptocurrency, and Google has bought a 5.4% stake there. It often starts that small a lot of the time with a small stake, and we're not sure how big it's eventually going to grow into. And they've, for example, have been trying to buy Windsurf, which is another smaller AI startup. But it seems like with the latest, they eventually did not buy Windsurf, but they decided to poach some of the people that are running Windsurf to move over to Google and bring some of those skills that they're coming from the smaller AI startups.
In the past, when, you know, a WhatsApp or a Instagram would get bought, they'll get a lot more money, and that would be good for them. There'll be a lot more investment. What happens when Google takes over AI development companies? I kind of want to think, well, that would be good for them, except I'm also reminded of DeepSeek, which was a kind of different story.
So when you think about it, is that they often get swallowed up and then it changes into something else. Think about Twitter, which became X as well, where a lot of people now are complaining that it's not doing what it used to be, what it used to do. There was, in the beginning, before Elon bought it, he said he had an issue with the number of bots that were being allowed to use the platform, but it seemed like those had been removed. But it seems like they're back, and it seems like they're back in massive numbers, and it seems like they're utilizing AI even when they share some of their commentary, and you get the sense that you're not really even interacting with something that's run by a human or that has any human or much human involvement. So and also now the where you find Grok AI being embedded as well into what has become X, which used to be Twitter as well, where a lot of people, if they need information, you no longer ask the general public that would be using X. You'd be asking a Grok, an AI tool, to give you some of that information. So it could be, I suppose, depending on the AI development, could be good or bad, depending on the direction things go.
I mean, the other thing is that companies like Google have always said, because innovation is so ferocious in the tech space, you mustn't regulate us because in 10 or 20 years we might be gone. But that won't be the case. They'll be able to re-entrench themselves.
And it hasn't been the case because it almost seems like when you look at how companies, for example, are trying to follow issues of legislation, because these tech companies move so fast and you find that they are so far ahead eventually, and the tools that they create of humans, of governments, and you find that they don't really disappear because they hold so much information, and they've moved so far ahead that it's governments that end up needing them as opposed to them collapsing. So that's where the regulation of these sales, I suppose, comes in, of these AI tools comes in. And you may think of, for example, American President Donald Trump, who's even put his foot down with where some of this information is coming from and who must buy what. But maybe there can be that regulation in terms of if it's done well. So they don't have so much power that they essentially are running the world, you and I, and how we even live our lives.
I mean, this is, in the end, becomes about the consumer experience, right? And when you have takeovers in a few small actors, that can lead to really good competition and a good experience for the consumer. If you have lots of actors, that can be quite diffuse, quite frustrating, not so good for the consumer, but also means there's no dominance.
Well, yes, but also you may think that if you have, for example, many players, let's go back to social media before social media was also consolidated. Think about how Facebook bought WhatsApp and Instagram. Before it got consolidated, you had, you may think that you probably would have had multiple options. They work differently from one another. You could get a variety of different information. But when they then consolidate information, because they're sharing information, they're sharing the tools, they're sharing the knowledge, you might find that you think you have options, but do you really have those options? Because if you get into one tool, that tool is going to operate in more or less the same way that another tool is going to operate in. But at the end of the day, while the consumer might worry about that, the collaboration is good for the companies that are sharing this information, because for them, they get to develop faster because of the sharing of information.
Siphumelele Zondi, thanks so much. You tech experts. Fascinating how all of this is moving. 16 after 7.
Spar brings you super savings. Get 2 litre Spar or sunflower oil for $69.99 with Spar Rewards, or 3 kg Sunlight 5-in-1 washing powder for $79.99. Save 25 Rand with Spar Rewards. Plus, you could win your share of 6 million Rand in instant cash. Competition ends 7 October. Price is valid 23 September to 7 October 2025. While stocks last. T's and C's apply.
The Wits School of Governance develops leaders and innovators who reimagine governance, strengthen institutions, and drive inclusive growth across Africa. Your journey to impact starts there, from postgraduate diplomas to masters, PhD programs, and executive education tailored for today's wicked problems. They equip change makers in government, civil society, and the private sector with the tools to lead boldly and with purpose. Governance matters. Visit wsg.ac.za and apply today.
This is Jade. She'll spend hours comparing almond milk and once made a spreadsheet just for sneakers. But when she found Santam, SA's leading short-term insurer that offers a range of cover options from vehicle to building and home contents, even she didn't overthink it. The kind of freedom Santam gives you takes some getting used to. Speak to your broker. Santam, this is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
There's strong, then there's AfriSem Strong. So champion the build with AfriSem Cement, the trusted A1 choice for builders who demand nothing less than superior quality. Crafted for exceptional strength, proven durability, and proudly produced in Mzansi. Because some builds just aren't strong. They're built to last with AfriSem, proud official sponsor to the Springboks.
Backed by popular demand, legendary jazz icon Kenny G will be performing at the Super Bowl at Sun City on Friday, the 3rd of October. Get ready for an unforgettable night of timeless hits and pure musical magic. Get your tickets from webtickets.co.za. Brought to you by Breakout Events and 702.
The Money Show. Small business focus.
Small Business Focus is brought to you by Capitec. Start up or scale up with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. 19 minutes after 7. Well, I'm sure you're aware of how long it can take to get proper healthcare from a government clinic. I mean, some of the stories that you hear are horrific. People waiting in lines for hours and days, and I'm sure sometimes weeks. You queue from 4 in the morning or even earlier. You have to give up days of work just to get some kind of treatment. Well, one small company is trying to sort of help companies around all of that. It's called Welo Health. The CEO and founder is Zanele Matome, and she's in our studio now. Zanele, good evening. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
How does it work? So you provide some healthcare services of your own for a sort of monthly fee. How does the service work?
So Welo started in 2020. And when we started, we were just delivering medication. We will pick up medication for people who use public health care. Pick up medication for you so that you don't have to queue from 5 a.m. up to 2 p.m. and just deliver to you. So, and then we grew to servicing SMEs and corporates, etc. So this new package called Welo SME is a package where now we took all of our learnings and our 3 top products, which is now medicine delivery, chronic medication delivery from public health care to your workplace, digital doctor consultation using WhatsApp, because we all on WhatsApp groups, be it gogos or estate people who are always fighting and all of that, but we all on WhatsApp groups. So you consult with the doctor on WhatsApp, you get your script there, you get your sick note there, instead of going to queue and go to the public hospital or public clinic. And then the third one, part of that package, so it's 3 things. The third service is now when we say a nurse comes to the workplace for the employer to come and do screenings. So the screenings will range from your high blood checkups, cholesterol, HIV, etc. So that we preach preventative. And for that package, you as the employer, so it's for 6 employees up to 1,000, etc. So you as the employer, you will pay 385 rands for your employee to get that package. So some of our clients will say, okay, I'll go 50-50 with my employees, subsidize them, or I'll just do the whole 100%.
Okay.
So that's Welo SME.
So I have to, I can just see the lawyers here. How do you get a sick note when the person, I presume the clinic doesn't actually see the patient?
So with the sick note, there's the digital doctor consultation. So you will be consulting, or your employee will be consulting with the Welo doctor.
Right.
That's when now the sick note will come in digitally. We'll send the sick note to the employee and to the employer. And the great thing about that one is that usually with sick notes, I used to be in mining where I had my small contracting company. Month end, Mondays, long weekends, etc.
Yes.
People will come with a sick note, and the doctor address will be somewhere in Elof Street. They know I won't go there and check if that doctor exists or not. But now with Welo, we're using our Welo doctors. So we are offering your employees our network of Welo doctors. So so we get around those things, those loopholes.
Okay, so the doctor will know not to just say the person says they have a fever. I actually need to see evidence of it.
Exactly, because they're not friends or related. And so and the doctor is not at Elof Street where we don't know where to find him.
You speak with some experience, Zanele. So what kind of companies are signing up for this? I mean, you're aiming it squarely at the SME market. It's not a huge amount of money a month. And I suppose for some people, particularly people who maybe have a chronic condition, it saves them so much time.
It does. So I'll start with the first question. The type of companies that are signing up would be like your restaurants. We've already signed up a few restaurants around Joburg, where they have like your chef, your support staff, your salons, a saloon with 6 employees. It will be as far as your enterprises, like your factories. We have a client that runs a factory in Joburg CBD. They have 500 employees. So anything from 6 up to 1,000 employees around South Africa. We service you as far as Kuruman and Hot Hazel in the Northern Cape, because we've been building that capacity and that database of nurses, doctors since 2020.
I mean, I tell people Hot Hazel exists and they don't believe me.
Oh, man.
No, it's quite bizarre. So, I mean, what you've discovered really is a sort of gap in the market. And the gap comes because of a failure of a government service. So how do you then make sure you get the service. Now, I get that obviously one person can go and get 20 scripts, okay? So so that's already 1/20th of the time saved for each person. But I mean, do they have to fight their way in a queue? Do you only employ people with sharp elbows or something?
No, no one has to fight their way. That's why we established this product, so that we eliminate queues, all the stresses of queues. So we do have, because we merge technology and human touch, that's why we are a health tech company. But we say, because we in Africa, you cannot go 100% digital. So we have our humans who do the other parts of the messy parts, but there will not be any queuing for our clients.
Do you find that people are very interested in this? I mean, do you think they're seeing the value of what you see yourself as offering?
They are interested. We even now have a wait list of individuals now. And we're like, you know what? This is a big elephant. We want to chew it face by face, because we're building a global company, we're building to last. So at the moment, we have like a wait list of 8,000 Stokvel members who has been knocking on our doors, I think, since last year, saying, we also want this for our Stokvel members. Or you will have El Rato who stays in Sandton and say, my mom is in the Eastern Cape. I don't mind paying for this because this is much cheaper than your usual medical aid companies, etc. We are not a medical aid company. So we do get people knocking on our doors, but we're like, okay, for individuals, not now. We're only dealing with SMEs, and we'll just roll this out face by face.
I mean, the joy of working with SMEs is you're going to get paid.
Yeah, exactly. We won't have to chase anyone for our payment.
Okay, so how many people are you employing at the moment? And I'm trying to think, you'll have some doctors, you will have some nurses.
Yes.
You will have also people who, I presume, go to clinics and get the medication.
Exactly. We call them our runners. So we have runners in South Africa. We have around 150 runners for now. And then we had a network of 750 nurses. The nurses are, so all of this is based on a gig model. Yeah. Because you want to be as asset-light as possible as a startup. So we have gig nurses. It will be nurse Lerato who works at a public hospital, private hospital. On their days, the days that they are not working, that's when now they get an opportunity to make extra money. We have paramedics as well. Paramedics, we added them this year when we started working as far as Cape Flats, your Alexandra and all of that. And some of our nurses were like, it's not safe to go there. And then we started hiring male paramedics as well. And then we have a network of doctors. So a doctor will be a Dr. Dutoy who has their own practice. And then they will say, okay, for 2 hours, I'll allocate it for Welo consults. So it's a gig economy model. Hence, we can scale across the country.
You did say in South Africa. Do you have some workers outside South Africa? Because
yes.
In some ways, the nursing and the sort of stuff that's happening digitally, you don't have to be in South Africa for.
Yes, we do, because we operate not only South Africa, we operate in 6 other African countries: Mozambique, Malawi, Botswana. Botswana is close to my heart because I grew up in Rustenburg, so
Yes.
I feel like it's home. So Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Lesotho, and all SADC countries except Namibia for now.
It's fascinating. Growth, I mean, the prospects must be huge, and you're going to face competition when you do it.
Yep, there is competition. There's already competition. But what I love about this ecosystem or the competition is that I feel that we complement each other, because this is such a huge market, not only for South Africa, but Southern Africa. So when we complement each other, that's when now we speak more of collaboration rather than competition. So there is competition. There are good players out there who are doing amazingly in terms of innovation and access to health.
Zanele, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Zanele Matome is the founder and CEO of Welo Health on Small Business Focus.
That's the sound of your business growing. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, turn your passion into profit with Capitec Business Banking. Save up to 50% on fees. Get fast credit approvals, personalized support, and Forex for your business. Open your business banking account on our app. Bank on better with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Capitec is an authorized FSP 46669. T's and C's apply.
Coming up,
The Aubrey Masango Show
on 702
and Cape Talk.
Aubrey, Hater, how's it going?
Hater, Steve, are you good?
Yeah, all right.
Nice
Thursday,
one,
close
nice
to
one,
Friday.
Absolutely.
What's coming up tonight?
So we start off with psychological matters just after 8, and Dr. Samgen Ngobo, who's a medical doctor, author, and mental health advocate, talks about the big elephant in the room, and that is mental illness and how we are gearing up to support very, very big numbers of people that are facing the prospects of mental illness. Willem Els, Senior Training Coordinator at the Institute for Security Studies, joins me in the second hour in our Crime Time feature to get a sense of what's going on at the Madlanga Commission. Interesting developments there. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I got to tell you, if I may just make a brief comment. You know, in Ekurhuleni, they finally suspend the guy who seems to have given blue lights. But they knew that he had given them, or allegedly given them, to Madlanga, to Kat Matlala.
Yeah.
But they didn't suspend him then.
Yeah.
But no, one comment at the Madlanga Commission, and off he goes. Bizarre.
It just tells you how much power the spotlight of the media has sometimes on some of these issues. Aisha Kaji, international relations analyst, joins me in the third hour of the show in our Africa at a Glance feature, and she'll be telling us about President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech at the UN General Assembly yesterday, and of course his charm offensive in that part of the world. And then the final hour of the show is an open line, as always, and that's the Aubrey Masango Show tonight.
Aubrey, thanks so much. From 8 o'clock this evening, just gone 7:30. Time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening. I didn't know John Steenhuisen liked blueberries that much.
Yes, he says that they're making gains and increasing market access for South African cherry and blueberry exports, with China at the fore. Good evening, Stephen. Steenhuisen told attendees of the International Berry Organization conference in Cape Town earlier this week that government is conducting negotiations with several countries in the Middle East and Asia to increase exports. The minister says there are promising signs that China will accept the cherry and blueberry exports as talks advance with Thailand and South Korea to open up new markets for blueberries. According to reports, Steenhuisen said that protocols are nearing completion in countries such as India, Israel and Vietnam, adding that other African countries would potentially provide new markets. A panel established to consider electoral reform options has failed to reach consensus, resulting in 2 reports being submitted to Parliament for consideration. A letter to the Home Affairs Minister from panel chairperson Richard Sizani sheds light on the disagreement between members regarding the contents of the final report. The panel members, who produced the majority alternative report, are largely former and current Electoral Commission officials who say that the so-called original report appeared to be biased. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
Over the years, there have been several panel reports suggesting changes to the country's electoral system as the electorate appeals for greater accountability from public representatives. This latest panel was chosen by Parliament in line with the Electoral Amendment Act passed in 2023, which provided for the matter to once again be considered following the introduction of independent candidates in last year's national and provincial elections. The majority report, supported largely by those who've worked for the IEC, proposes 3 main constituency-based options at the national level that would allow for individuals to directly elect 1 or more representatives from a district, and not only for all 400 MPs to be chosen by political parties. The original or minority report also presents 3 options, including the status quo and 2 smaller 2-tier compensatory and constituency systems. The reports are still to be considered by Parliament's Home Affairs Committee for further recommendation to the House. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
Western Cape police say they've arrested 92 suspects and confiscated the same number of guns in the past week as the crackdown on illegal firearms and gang violence continues. The cache includes handguns, homemade firearms, rifles and semi-automatic weapons, with the majority seized in the Cape Metropole. Police say the majority of guns were seized in the Cape Metropole, an area plagued by relentless gang activity and gun-related killings. The police's Andre Trout says the search and seizure operations took place in Delft, Mfuleni, Muizenberg, Nyanga, Mitchells Plain and Solendam.
Each firearm recovered represents not only a disruption to criminal operations, but also the prevention of potential bloodshed in vulnerable communities. This week alone, operations in Delft, Mfuleni, Muizenberg, Nyanga, Mitchells Plain and Swellendam led to the recovery of 19 firearms with several rounds of ammunition, underscoring SAPS's focus on breaking the cycle of violence in areas hardest hit by gang rivalries and drug turf wars.
And Amazon has agreed to pay $2.5 billion to resolve claims brought by the U.S. government that it tricked millions of people into enrolling as Prime members and made it difficult to cancel. A total of $1.5 billion will go to refunds for customers that were duped into signing up for the service, and this is according to the proposed settlement announced by Federal Trade Commission. The deal came just a few days after trial began before a jury in Seattle. It marks a major victory for the FTC, yielding the largest ever civil penalty secured by the agency. A look at your weather. A cloudy Friday in store for Gauteng. Tomorrow, temperatures will drop to overnight lows of 12 and 13 degrees and peak at highs between 23 and 25 degrees. Clear skies for Cape Town, along with fresh southerly winds at a low of 13 and a high of 23 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says they're making gains in increasing market access for South African cherry and blueberry exports, with China at the fore.
Every wall tells a story. Now, yours can be told with elegance, resilience, and colours designed to last. A creation rooted in heritage, perfected for today. The wait is over. The finest has arrived. Discover the finest now on promotion from 24 September to 12 October only at Chamberlain. Your space, your colour, our finest paint yet. Chamberlain, famous for hardware since 1903.
In a world where a lot can change in 6 years, you can rest assured knowing that Hino's 6-year drivetrain warranty won't. All Hino trucks now come standard with a 6-year drivetrain warranty, protecting your investment all the way from pistons to gears. Built to keep your business moving, supporting uptime, growth and daily operations, because although a lot can change in 6 years, their warranty promise won't. T's and C's apply. Hino, all the way.
1 degree defines you as a master of business, the MBA. The life-changing Gibbs MBA empowers you to lead an organization or start your own business within the dynamic African context. Choose from 90 electives and 8 focus areas: general management, entrepreneurship, consulting, manufacturing, digital, humane leadership, healthcare, and climate leadership. For our next information session, go to gibbs.co.za/MBA. Gibbs is a Triple Crown internationally accredited business school in Ilovo, Sandton.
You know those finfluencers, the kind of bros making bank in Bali, calling themselves forex gurus, promising you can make money while you sleep if you just buy their course. But then you end up losing sleep, waking up for different market openings, checking charts, scanning the members-only group chat for signals, and you start wondering, why do they call it day trading when you're spending all night spending your money to make money, only to realize that they make their money selling courses on how to make money. Oh. When you can't trust overnight wins, trust 30 years of market-beating returns.
Coronation. Trust is earned. Coronation is an authorized FSP.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
24 minutes now to 8 the time. Well, from time to time, you'll hear about an initial public offering, the first time that a company is going to be listed. And there's often so much excitement. I mean, last year, the big story was Boxer. Do you remember when Boxer was listing? Everyone was talking about it. Sometimes companies will list on the JSE with a little bit less excitement. They might be a bit smaller, for example, than Boxer and less well known. But the joy of investing in an IPO is that you might be in a position in which the value is going to grow. And so it's incredibly attractive, but it is also brand new. So you also need to be quite careful of that because you can still lose money. So how to invest wisely in an IPO is your subject this evening. Vincent Anthony Raja is the CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital. Vincent, good evening. Thanks for coming back to us on Investment School on The Money Show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Good evening to everyone.
Okay, so you hear about a company that's having an IPO. They're listing on the stock exchange. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot in the sort of business media about it. What do you need to look for before you make a decision about whether you should get involved in this or not?
Well, I think the first things that you need to start off with are your traditional appraisal criteria. I mean, you first need to understand whether this is a company. Forget about the IPO. You'll need to understand whether this is a business that it's fundamentally sound, whether you'd be investing it if it was listed already. So the IPO often creates excitement. It creates potential for FOMO in the sense that you're not currently an investor. it's an asset that no one really generally has access to. But it's important to put those feelings aside and really look at the company fundamentals. So, what does the company do? What competitive advantages does it have? What are its growth prospects like? And then assess that first before you dive in. And there's a number of other useful things that you can know, try and find out around the IPO, which is, why is the company looking to list? Is it looking to raise more capital? What does it want to do with that capital? Or the more perhaps one that you need to be really cautious about is, is our existing shareholders looking to exit? And why are they looking to exit? Is it a private equity firm that's looking for liquidity? In which case, could you be potentially buying at a very high valuation? And those are the things that you need to consider on a secondary basis.
I mean,
I don't know if that's
yeah. It seems almost as if the reason why it is being listed is almost as important, actually, as the underlying value of the company, because that tells you what the people who currently own it are expecting the future of the company to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if I take the earlier example that I gave you, if the company is looking to raise capital for growth, for expansion, those are often good signs. It's the company just maturing through its growth cycle. If you think back to Meta, or what was then called Facebook's listing at the time, go back to the likes of Amazon, those are growth-hungry or capital-hungry businesses that went past the private phase and needed the broader capital market support to take it to the next level. Whereas then you sometimes find other companies where private equity investors, having gotten early, are looking to exit, and sometimes that is a bit of a red flag. Particularly, and the thing that you need to check for is also if the founders and earlier investors don't have what's called lockup periods. In other words, a few weeks after the listing, they can start selling their shares in the market. That can be often quite problematic.
I mean, the other thing is that with the big examples, and we use the big examples because we remember them, of Amazon or Facebook, there's a lot of transparency. I would imagine most IPOs on the JSE, some of them, like Boxer, will have that level of transparency, but a lot of them won't.
Yeah, I think Boxer is a great example because that's one where the business itself was known. It was inside another listed entity. So it's a great example of capital restructuring where the parent company needed capital, still wanted to remain a shareholder. So all of the signs of, let's call it, a positive reason for listing that business were there. There are also negative reasons. And, unfortunately, in my earlier investment banking days, I was involved with a few of those where, perhaps there was a company that privately was in a lot of financial distress and needed the capital markets to sort of bail it out. And while the assets may have been sound, let's call it, the management team weren't incentivized for long-term sustainable value creation for shareholders. And, going back to that example I told you about lockup periods, I mean, I still feel really bad when I think of one of, this sort of senior portfolio managers out in the market who shouted at us because, the lockup period wasn't long enough. And, it's, as one would expect, as soon as that lockup period expired, the management team started selling their shares. And that didn't end well at all. I mean, a few years later, the company was in a lot more trouble than before its listing,
So often when you're looking at an IPO, there'll be a prospectus. So it's a sort of, what is this company for? What is it going to do? And I am sure, Vincent, I mean, I've never met one of these people, but I'm sure they exist. There is an art to writing a prospectus. Someone probably does this professionally. So when you are reading a prospectus, would you expect to find all the answers to the questions you've posed there?
You've got to read a prospectus very cynically. So there'll be plenty of information there. But you can rest assured that, let's call it, even the good IPOs, the good opportunities, will always present the best foot forward. I think a sign of a healthy IPO is one where there's enough of a reasonable section on risks. And there you get a good sense of the management team's ability and their own perception of risk. Where you find, let's call it that the narrative in the IPO is greatly skewed towards the opportunity, and let's call it a less than reasonable appraisal of the risk. I think that's where your sort of cynical antenna needs to be at its highest.
Okay, so I like the idea of just reading it cynically. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. The joy of an IPO, and people will always think of the big successes. So, I think I used the example on the Money Show a few months ago that, everyone would think, well, if I had invested in Capitec when it listed, I would be very rich now. But if I had invested in Capitec 5 years before it listed, I'd be even richer, right? So timing really matters. And the idea for a lot of people is an IPO would be the first time you can get exposure to a company. And so that, I presume, shows you how important the timing is. And you use the word FOMO, fear of missing out, a little earlier. And isn't that what kind of drives the excitement around these things?
Definitely does. And what that tends to do is, even for good companies, that FOMO and depending on how broadly the stock will be issued, because you've got to be careful. Sometimes with IPOs, if there are other preferred large asset managers in front of the queue, they might get a better allocation than yourselves, and that tends to cause a bit of a squeeze for the price. And what happens is, on listing date, the price is probably artificially high sometimes. And that's where, you often find that IPOs, it is quite common for them to underperform quite badly. Not that the company itself is bad, it's just that the pricing at that point in time might have been overhyped. So, investment banks are highly incentivized to try and get the best price possible for their client, which is really not you, the investor. It's the company and those looking to list their equity. So you have to be, that cynicism is important in IPOs, and you've got to be really careful. So one of the examples that we often do is just check the extent. If you go back to the Boxer example, and the reason I'll bring it up, it's a good one. At that IPO, it was quite reasonable because Boxer was growing faster than ShopRite, had better margins in certain aspects, and therefore the price to earnings multiple that was being requested was really reasonable compared to other comparable businesses. When you find that the valuation metrics being asked are stretched and require growth and lots of things to go right, that's when you need to be very careful.
That's very interesting. So that issue, and you made the point that the price can sometimes drop quite dramatically after the IPO. And I've seen this. I mean, there's a good example of ASP on the JSE at the moment, where the valuation can swing so wildly, and it's not the only one. There've been one or two others I've noticed. On the first day it sort of is often up dramatically, the next day it's down dramatically. Why does a share that is new to the JSE often swing so wildly? And I must say, obviously, Boxer swung a little bit, but then calmed down quite quickly, and that was probably because the value of it was known so well. But why is there this sort of wild phase in a share price of a relatively newly listed stock?
Look, to be fair, Stephen, even Boxer had a wild first day, I remember. I mean, there was big swings. So even with a stock of that size, of that magnitude, what you often find squeezing the price up is, especially in the case where there's lots of demand for that asset, you'll find that many investors were left out or didn't get the complete allocation that they wanted, and then they end up just squeezing the price up aggressively. What you also find on, and this is the case sometimes, is there are specialist funds that short, so once a stock has IPO'd and there's scrip available to borrow, you do find there are strategies that are out there that, if the criteria is right, they'll short it. And again, because the stock is new, because a big part of the shareholding probably isn't most confident, and they probably bought what they needed to buy. Therefore, if the price drops, 10 or so percent, you won't find that there's support in the market to pick up the shares, because everybody's kind of had their fill. It's those kind of events where you just need to be guarded about, especially where there's a lot of unknowns. So I guess that kind of volatility is more of a reflection of when something's really new, hasn't really been understood before, it takes a while. So, if one takes a look at ASP, it's not the most well understood company out there, contrasted to Boxer, which is well understood primarily because it was a division of Pick n Pay.
I mean, it's amazing that there are people whose model is to short a brand new stock. I mean, I realize that all's fair in love in the JSE, but that's rough.
Yeah, it is rough. And that's the JSE. I mean, you'll find on the global exchanges, it's far more aggressive. One has to think about Uber's IPO, which also did quite badly for a while after listing. So again, there are funds out there that do that when something is hyped, and there's certain signs often where, especially as you get closer to the expiry of lockup periods, that's where these issues can arise. Sometimes you even find that if there's a founder involved, when they IPO, sometimes you might find that they have these collar structures in place which protect them against the downside. But what it means is there's a bank somewhere that actually needs to short as the share price drops because they provided the guarantee. And it's these kind of structures around IPOs that one has to be very careful of and wary of.
You're with Investment School on The Money Show. Your questions for Vincent Anthony Raja, the CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital, looking at IPOs, so a company listing on the stock exchange, an initial public offering. 011 8830 702 021 446 0567. Voice notes as well for Vincent on 072 702 1702. It's 10 minutes to 8. You with The Money Show.
To celebrate 25 years of helping you live the Premier life, FNB Premier is giving you a chance to win a 14-day European tour experience and other cool monthly prizes. Open any FNB Premier account from September to 31 December 2025. Switch your salary, swipe or tap a minimum of 2,000 Rand per month for 3 months straight. Spend and win with FNB Premier. FNB, help changes everything. TCs and competition rules apply. FNB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and credit provider.
This September, Joburg Theatre brings you a powerful mix of drama, music, and dance. Dancing the Death Drill, adapted from Fred Khumalo's acclaimed novel, tells the tale of Pito Mutaung, a South African soldier forever changed by the tragic sinking of the SS Mendi. The cast features Kwenzo Ngobo, Tuli Tabete, and Clint Brink, with choreography by Luyanda Sidia and original music by Msaki. This is a story of love, loss, and remembrance. Catch it from 9 to 28 September 2025 on the Mandela stage at Joburg Theatre. Dancing the Death Drill, a moment in history brought to life. Book now at joburgtheatre.com.
Dreaming of a tropical escape? World Leisure Holidays has your ticket to paradise with exclusive getaways to the Indian Ocean Islands. From the beaches of Mauritius and the Maldives to the charm of Madagascar, Seychelles, Zanzibar, and more, your dream destination awaits. Take advantage of early bird specials and pay stay offers. Call 011-285-2500 and mention 702 for a mystery discount. Or follow us on social media or contact your nearest travel professional. Start planning your escape today. T's and C's apply.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
8 minutes to 8 the time on The Money Show this evening. An investment school, an initial IPO, in other words, an initial public offering. So it's the first time a company is listing on the stock exchange. When should you get involved and when should you not? Vincent Anthony Raja is the CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital. He's taking your questions too on 011 8830 702 and 021 446 0567. Vincent, I've been sort of scratching my head a little bit as I listen to you talk about the kind of danger of it and the excitement of it. It would seem to me that really it might be much safer, depending on what kind of investor you are, how aggressive you are, that actually you should basically invest in an IPO about a month after they actually list. You'd have a much better picture of where you are with all of the things you've been talking about.
Yeah, I was actually reflecting on that, Stephen, is that for the retail investor, the problem with an IPO is that you're often at a severe disadvantage when it comes to information. So often the only piece of information that you have is the prospectus. And you'll find that institutional investors, especially around IPOs, often have access to curated analyst reports. So you might find that the company appoints 3 independent stockbrokers to write research about the company. And that gets sent to a select group of investors, and that's not open to the public. Now, this advantage, is often given to big investors so that they can anchor the IPO. So, in other words, what happens is, people that come in and underwrite the IPO, as an example, or anchor it, often get sometimes preferred pricing. They often get a fee, but importantly, they get information well ahead of the rest of the market, and to compete against that is kind of difficult. So while an IPO might be anchored by a lot of large investors, there's also often large investors that have sat this one out, but you don't know the reasons for that. So, I would often say, unless you've really done the work and you've got an advantage in terms of understanding that industry, which many retail people do, you might find that it's an industry that you understand the competitive landscape, then that's fine. But if it's something that is, beyond your general understanding, just be a little bit cautious. And I think you're right, often better to sit it out. And even if the stock continues to run and you miss out a little bit, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to buy it at the absolute bottom,
I mean, it's just a reminder, and you and I have had this conversation, we've had it many times, about how you need to sort of try and be as unemotional as possible in making these decisions, because everyone's talking about this, it's exciting. The thing about an IPO, which other shares don't have, is that there's actually an event at a certain time. There'll be a CEO grinning proudly with a team at the stock exchange, actually doing something. I mean, it's very exciting.
Yeah, correct. And you have to park that FOMO. That's the most dangerous thing. And at the same time, be cynical, but, realistically cynical. I think, often, again, because you're on the wrong side of the information matrix, the insiders, the current holders, they know. So you've got to always ask, why are they selling, and have a healthy dose of cynicism. It never hurts.
The thing is, though, you might have, say you take part in an IPO, you buy some shares on the first day, the share price drops, and then, again, you actually still don't know enough about whether to keep those shares or not. I could see the advice coming the other way. Hang on to them for another month, because the short sellers will have gone, all of the things will have been fleshed out. So I'm completely with you on the need to be careful, but, an optimist could argue it the other way, too.
No, sure. That's why I said, cynical, but it must be a healthy level of cynicism. And when you do invest in IPOs, you should have that discipline. Firstly, keep some powder dry. We know that most IPOs underperform in the short period afterwards. And if you're comfortable and you understand the prospects, and understand that even the IPO price is reasonable, and at some point the market will continue to reward the share, then you can use those devaluations to increase your holding steadily. And that's why, if you go back to what I was saying earlier, if you understand the valuation relative to the peer group, etc., at IPO date, you should have a range of price. It's not the one price or the IPO price that you should hang your hat onto. You should know that there's a level below that, or there's a range at which you'll feel comfortable to keep on buying. And that's why it's important to keep your powder dry, because once you've made the decision and you're comfortable with it, and nothing has changed other than the price dropping, then you should use that opportunity to continue to increase your position.
And there is a risk to missing out, right? You can actually miss out if you're not careful. If you just say, I'm never going to do an IPO, you will lose out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say, there have been, and here I think I must, give some credit to the regulators. I think while the JSE gets flack on sometimes, I think the amount of regulatory due diligence in bringing an IPO, particularly to stock exchanges like the JSE, it should give you some level of comfort, and that's an important thing. So I think, like I said, your cynicism should be healthy, and there are definite examples and a lot where just being too cynical on IPO is not the right investment decision.
Vincent Anthony Raja, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. The CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital on your investment school on The Money Show tonight.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country.
US indices still down tonight, mainly because of lack of optimism in interest rate changes. The Dow Jones is down 0.45%. The Nasdaq is down 0.71%. The S&P 500 down 0.2%. I think the market just really trying to understand what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. And of course, it's under intense pressure from the US President Donald Trump as well. Trump is still dominating the news pretty much here, there, and everywhere at the moment. Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow for the Friday edition of The Money Show. Plenty to come then, plenty to come with Aubrey as well. So do stay listening with Aubrey Masango. He takes over in a few moments. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening. I'm Maki Mulapo. The Constitutional Court has reserved judgment in a challenge to have the Sexual Offences Act changed. The Centre for Applied Legal Studies made submissions to the court today for the act not to be amended. A constitutional challenge was launched by NPO, the Embrace Project, 3 years ago. Last year,